Hello, this is Stacy from Truly Majestic. Today we're going to be making this Andalusian stitch blanket. You'll need to cast on 17 stitches for this project. The first thing we're going to do is tie a simple knot. It does not need to be a slip knot, just a simple knot, and you want the tail facing forward. Now I'm going to be grabbing my yarn from around the back and pulling it through the front of the loop, and I'm just going to be chaining 17 stitches. It's best actually if you chain one extra, 18, in case you've miscounted or you need to make some adjustments. Now you'll notice on your chain, the front of it looks like a braid or a plait, and the back of it should have big dashes down the center of the chain. This is the back of your cast on, and the braid or plait is the front of the cast on. What we're going to do next is pull one more stitch up through the end, and this is the first stitch of the next row, which is still a cast on row. Now we're going to pull our yarn through each dash or bump that's on the back side of our cast on. So there's bumps on one side and a braid on the other side. You want the bumps facing you for this, and just pull the yarn up through each one. You want the yarn loops to be big enough for you to get your hand through and sit comfortably on your arm. Not too big, not too small, and try to make them as even as you can. This whole process can be done easier if it's on the floor or on a table. Now let's just have a quick count down through all the loops to see if I have 17. And if I have 18, that's just fine. We'll just take one stitch off and just use the 17 loops. So I have 18. So we need to take this last stitch away, and we will make that little bump go away when we're finished with our blanket. Let's just get to the other side to show you. This is the back side and this is the front side. It has a nice braid, and we'll be having the braid facing us. Put your hand through the loops now, from the back of the loop to the front of the loop, and this will make sure the loops are facing the right direction. For the Andalusian pattern, you're going to slip the first stitch in every row. For rows 1 and 2, you're going to knit all the stitches. For row 3, you're going to again slip the first stitch and then purl knit, purl knit, purl knit all the way till the end, and repeat that pattern from rows 1 to 3. The last stitch in every row, no matter which row you're working on, is always a knit through the back loop, which means you just pull the yarn straight through. You don't knit it through the front or the back, just straight through the loop. For the first stitch, I'm going to slip it onto my other arm without knitting it, without doing anything. And then I'm going to knit the rest of the stitches. You do this by pulling your yarn through the back of the loop to the front and putting it on your arm. A knit stitch always goes from the back of the loop to the front of the loop and then put it on your arm. We're going to do this till the very end and leave one stitch on the arm, and we're going to knit through the back loop, that one. For the very last loop, we're going to hold our yarn in our hand and pull it straight through the loop. This is called KTBL, or knitting through the back loop. It's very simple. We're going to do the same on this row. Slip the first stitch and knit all the rest of the stitches till you have one loop left, and then knit that through the back loop. Now for the very last stitch in this row and all rows, you're going to be knitting through the back loop, which means hold your yarn and pull it straight through the end of the loop. For this third row, we're going to slip the first stitch, and then we're going to knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. You purl by taking the yarn and putting over the front of the loop and pulling the yarn from the front of the loop to the back and putting your hand through. So get the hang of that and do it all the way to the last stitch, and then the last stitch you knit through the back loop. This is just knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, all the way to the end. So you've knitted one whole set now. You need to continue this pattern on until the end of the blanket until you have enough yarn for one more row. So you're going to knit 2 rows from now on, and then you're going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 until the end, and then knit 2 more rows and follow on the exact same pattern. Once you have just enough yarn for one row, I'll meet you and we'll do a cast off. Alright, it's time to cast off. So I'm going to be teaching you a basic principle for casting off. To cast off any row, we're going to first slip the first stitch like we do in all of our rows, and we're going to knit or purl the second. Whether you're knitting it or purling it depends on the pattern that you're using. So you would do a normal row. Once we have 2 stitches on our arm, we slip the back stitch over the top stitch and drop it off. And we're going to do the same thing through the entire blanket. So whether you're knitting or purling depends on their pattern. This is a basket stitch pattern, so I'm going to be purling 3, knitting 3, and purling 3. But if you're doing an Andalusian stitch or a seed stitch or a moss stitch, it might be knit, purl, but you always should have 2 loops on your arm, drop the back one over the front one, and then knit 1 more loop, so you have 2 loops again, drop the back over the front. Okay, we're almost finished, and I'm going to have 1 loop left. With that 1 loop, I'm going to pull the tail of my yarn, which shouldn't be too long. You can shorten it if it is too long. Pull it all the way through and snug up this loop. Then I'm going to tuck in these ends and hide them into the blanket. So this is my cast on end. Remember we had that funny bump because we had too many stitches? That was to show you that it's not a problem if you have a chain with a bump. So you just simply untie that, pull your tail through this loop, and then weave in the ends. And that's done by simply tucking it in here and there along the edges of your blanket. Disguise it nicely. You don't want it bulging out. And then it'll be finished, and you should have an awesome, gorgeous blanket in the end. You also need to do the same, tucking it in the end with the other side. Your finished product should look something like this. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Happy arm knitting from Truly Majestic. If you have any questions, you can contact me on my Facebook page, or you can comment under this video and I will get back to you.